Hi everyone, Steve the Amateur Historian here with a fresh episode of Historic Murders of Portland. Could you have guessed? And I am coming to you from, I don't know. I don't think I'm in Goose Hollow anymore. I don't know. I'm near Providence Park. Anyway, I'm trying to get to Southwest 14th Avenue, near where Interstate 405 goes by, between Yamhill, which is this intersection I'm coming to right now, and Taylor, which is the next one down. So I'm very close. And in this fresh episode, try not to look away so much because I know that cuts my voice off, but as I do it again, kind of. In this fresh episode, in this series, we've got another case, and I know I cover a lot of cases that deal in marriage collapses, infidelity, things that drive one loved one to kill off their significant other, among others. But I cover these because each one's a little bit different than the last one. And this one is, in many ways, your classic tale of jealousy driving someone to do crazy things. But it's sprinkled with all sorts of other interesting little things. And a lot of denial. Oh my god, what is that smell? Oh, jeez. It's probably whatever that is. Alright everybody, get ready for it to get a little loud. I am going to be kind of on the fringe of the freeway over here, because 14th Avenue borders the freeway, but for this case, you have the Reynolds family. I don't think it's the same Reynolds that were of prominence in Portland, that they got a high school named after them and all that stuff. These may be distant relatives, but I don't know if there's any relation. Anyway, you have Charles and Lulu Reynolds, married couple who lived on 14th here between Taylor, which this is Taylor right next to me, and this is 14th, and then Yamhill is right up here. And yeah, it gets loud. So, the general proximity of where the Reynolds home would have been pretty much right here. I was thinking it might have been in this old apartment complex here, but I believe this was built a little after this case happened. So, and when I match the address to the exact location on Google Maps, it kind of put it to the side. So like this parking lot area here is kind of the vicinity of where the Reynolds home was. Now the big day where this story blows up is June 19th, 1907. In the vicinity of the Reynolds home, which would have been here-ish behind me. So you have the happy family home, right? Well, around the corner from this truck, and the happy Reynolds home. However, it appears Lulu, the wife, has become enamored with, is seeing, visiting, fooling around with this guy named George Hibbens. George Hibbens is a music teacher from Walla Walla, Washington. I don't know how he ended up mixed up with a woman who lived on 14th Avenue, west side of Portland, Oregon, but somehow they ended up connecting with one another. And yeah, I am seriously wondering if the home was where this parking lot was, or if it was just here before. I'm not 100% certain these apartments weren't here yet, but I don't think these apartments are quite 1907. I think they were done the next decade. But either way, probably in the general area where the home was. And I'm going to circle the block while I tell the story because it's too freaking loud here. So, as this little affair is going along, like most affairs, it goes on as long as it can before subtle hints start dropping. And Charles Reynolds, who actually ran a bathhouse, I don't know if they mean bathhouse in the sense that we think of a bathhouse these days. I think it was genuinely like maybe a Turkish bath kind of thing. I'm not dead certain. Way off that way in the vicinity of where Waldo Block is, which is like 2nd and Morrison, 2nd and Alder, kind of that area. I mean, if you're not from Portland, you're not going to know what any of that means, but if you are, you'll know kind of the area I'm talking about. So, Charles Reynolds stumbles onto some letters that Hibbens had written his wife, and it was reported that it got to a point where Hibbens was sending Lulu Reynolds four letters a day. Oh man, this property's under video surveillance. I have them under surveillance. It's cool. I'd like to back up into this corner here, but I don't want someone to be suspicious about me. Who is this guy? So Charles Reynolds is understandably suspicious, and as we process closer to this June 19th, 1907 date, things are getting... There's not really any real detailed explanation as to how Lulu and George Hibbens met. There's no real explanation for, once it became clear to Charles Reynolds what the actions were that he took, whether he told his wife stop seeing this guy or else, or what went on with him and George. But it seems like the problem was just festering, to use an apropos word. And in essence, things really started to reach a peak June 18th. So the night before, all hell broke loose. And Charles is told by his kids that Hibbens is in town, and Hibbens has seen his wife. So you come to the realization that there's still something going on here. And it's interesting because the following day, June 19th, in the early part of the day, Charles and Lulu go out for a morning stroll together. They actually went to the top of Council Crest, which is the highest point in kind of the Portland area. You can see like everything around for miles from up there. So it seems like they were having like a good morning together. Nothing out of the ordinary, and who knows what one or both of them were thinking while that was going on. But essentially after that, she went back home. Charles went back to work at his bathhouse over on 2nd and Morrison area. And it seems that they had plans to meet up at a park later on. And while Charles is at work, Lulu phones him to tell him that the plans have to change, and she's unfortunately not going to be able to go to the park with him. And then, while she's on the phone, George Hibbens, in essence, seals his own fate, because while they're on the phone, and Charles Reynolds is maybe a little suspicious why his wife is bailing at the last second, he hears George Hibbens in the background, there with his wife, saying something to the effect of, "Hey sweetheart, don't waste any more time talking to him, like, just hang up and we're gonna go do what we want to do." So Charles Reynolds hears that, and he absolutely snaps. Now, you know, it's the early 1900s, and Charles Reynolds, like most guys, he had a firearm that he carried with him daily, regularly. So, a man possessed with rage, to say the least, he comes home, which actually I wonder if you can kind of see it through here a little bit. Not really, there's a fence there. I was going to say, because their home would have been right over here as I'm circling the block. He takes up his gun and he starts beelining it for home, which his workplace is maybe 12, 13 blocks away. And it's a pretty simple setup. He comes home, the first thing he hears, a man enraged with a firearm, the first thing he hears is his wife and George Hibbens upstairs chuckling and having a good time. So he methodically goes upstairs to wherever they are, whether they're in a hallway, a bedroom, I'm assuming a bedroom. He goes in, opens the door, boom, shoots George Hibbens several times, just unloads on him in this moment of just, you know, rage that was typical of that time. And, you know, if that was the end of the story, you know, that'd be fairly uneventful, but it's very strange. First things first is George Hibbens doesn't die. He actually manages, with all these riddled with bullet holes, he manages to stumble out of the house over here. They say it's a house. Maybe it was an apartment, rooming house, I don't know. They say it's a house in the newspapers. But he stumbles, you know, out onto the street and starts slowly making his way this direction towards the hotel rooming house that he was staying in. Probably just spilling blood, you know, all over the streets and sidewalks on his way. But yeah, that had to be bewildering to anybody who was in this area at that time, to just see this guy come stumbling out of a house and out into the street, and he's all bloody and he's just trying to do anything he can to get away and to survive. And so here's the situation. So obviously the freeway was not here yet. So I'm guessing they probably, I don't know if this valley was here before or if this was just flat land that they dug down so that the streets can still go through. But you look through these trees, and right through here on the other side is where the Reynolds home was. So you've got George Hibbens meandering through here somewhere and heading this way down Yamhill Street, crossing the bridge right here. This is Yamhill and 13th right here. And his rooming house was only like a block or two this way. So he was running for his life from this madman shooting his gun towards his rooming house in that way. So here's where it gets positively off-the-wall bewildering. Obviously, gunfire is heard, neighbors are concerned, the police are called, they immediately report to the scene of a shooting at the Reynolds, or at least in the vicinity of the Reynolds home. The police show up, and Charles and Lulu Reynolds are just very passively hanging out in their home. Lulu is, I think, in the living room, kitchen area. Charles is upstairs at a desk in a room. And when the police show up on the scene and walk in of, you know, a husband, scorned husband, killing his wife's presumed lover, the police show up and they're completely calm, and they both deny that anything happened. So, a shooting here? Oh no, you must be confusing us with some other dastardly couple, you know? And later on, one of the officers on the scene would come out and say that Lulu Reynolds denied being Charles's wife, which of course was easy to verify. So it was just like, I don't know if this shooting did something to knock their circuits out, but they behaved absolutely out of their minds. They acted completely calm, denied anything happened, even though, you know, a man was just brutally shot to death. I'm sure there was blood all over the upstairs where Hibbens was shot. And this couple just acted like nothing happened. And then Lulu switches and says, "This man's not even my husband." I don't know, well, then what are you doing both casually living in a home together? How are you going to deny your marriage to a guy that I'm sure there's documentation for? Just bizarre. And while that's going on, you've got Charles Hibbens, who's still meandering this way, just bleeding out all over the place around here, because he needs to get back to his rooming house, which is right over here at the corner of what I believe is Morrison. I'm having to look at that. Morrison and 11th. Ugh. Rough. So, this is actually a really interesting area. There's lots of train lines, kind of trains turn around through here and stuff, so you do have to keep your eyes open as I hear a train coming. But it's also lined with these cool old little apartment buildings and rooming houses and whatnot. And one of these rooming houses, I actually think it's still marked with its original name, because I think it was called the Lincoln Hotel, and it's where Charles Hibbens was staying. And it's this little, again, you know, these murders from over 110 years ago. The building is still here. This building right here in front of me, this is the building that Charles Hibbens was staying at and where he ran back to after being shot. So, I mean, wow. I mean, Charles Hibbens made it about 5 or so blocks back to his rooming house. I wanted to say there was some marker on here that shows that it's, you know, like so many old rooming houses and hotels in the area, businesses on the bottom, living quarters upstairs. Oh, yeah, here we go. Here's a sign marking it that says the Lincoln Hotel right there. So yeah. Oh, this is cool. This old tile here. So yeah, you'd think he would have maybe ran in this way. I know he made it back to his hotel. I don't know if he made it inside, but in this area, either right out front or maybe he made it back up to his room. That is where George Hibbens finally expired from his gunshot wounds. I mean, geez, he was shot like 4 times. I'm amazed he made it this far. But at the same time, screw George Hibbens. I mean, what a scumbag. This is a guy, no concern for the family he's about to break apart, no concern for even probably Lulu Reynolds cares and wants, doesn't care about her husband, doesn't care about the family they have. They had children together. He was just about, I'm a man in 1907 and I want to get this woman and I don't care if I break their family apart. So I have a really hard time feeling sorry for George Hibbens and what happened to him. Obviously, I don't justify, in most circumstances, taking the law into your own hands, but this guy was such... And then just the fact that, like, he snuck his way into their home, and while Lulu's talking to her husband, who she's had children with, he's just like, oh, don't waste your time with that, you know, hang up the phone, don't waste your time with that guy any longer. I mean, what did you think was going to happen? He was too stupid to keep his voice down to keep Charles Reynolds from knowing he was there. So instead of maybe being able to sneak around a few more times, this guy ended up dead in the vicinity of this building right here. So, I'm getting my own personal soundtrack. Funeral music for George Hibbens. Don't they usually play bagpipes at memorials? Here's to you, George Hibbens. You sack of shit. That was just... The timing on that was too perfect. I'm talking about a dead guy and there's a guy playing bagpipes on a street corner right in front of me. I couldn't pass up an opportunity to say rest in peace to this scumbag from Walla Walla. But the story doesn't quite end there, because of course the authorities discover pretty quickly what actually had happened. And Charles Reynolds was, despite the justification some people might give him, he wasn't going to be able to just walk away from an event such as this. And it really is tragic that, and I don't know, I think this guy was I think this guy was just completely out of his mind when all is said and done. I mean, he snapped at what happened, and I don't know. I think in the aftermath, this guy went into some serious denial. In the aftermath, of course, now her wife's lover is killed. He then, Charles Reynolds, comes to the conclusion that he's sorry to his wife, and he's sorry that he ever thought that she would ever cheat on him. And he became fully convinced in the aftermath of that his wife was guilty of no wrongdoing. This is after all these letters he had sent, which he had obviously kept. That should be a warning sign. His children even told him that they had seen her embracing him, days leading up to this murder. And then she contacts him the day it happens to lie to him and tell him, hey, I'm not going to make it to our rendezvous today. Sorry. And it turns out she's blowing him off so she can spend time with George Hibbens. So I don't know what in this guy's mind makes him think that his wife wasn't cheating on him. But yeah, that was the thing. He just fully forgave his wife, and I'm sure she walked right into that, was like, well, this is a freebie. And it's just like, oh, isn't that great? You know what? Me and my wife are going to be just fine. I'm sorry I ever doubted you, honey. Credits, Disney logo, happy ending. Even though it took a guy getting blown the hell away and dying, leaving a trail of blood all over western part of downtown Portland for this thing to get resolved. So, these Reynolds, man, these are some messed up people. I gotta tell you. And beyond that, there was verification that Lulu Reynolds had gone to George Hibbens' room at the Lincoln Hotel. It was the guy that ran the place said that she had a key to his room, and she showed up in the aftermath of all this to pick up belongings of hers that she left in his room. So not only was he visiting her at their home, she was visiting him in his room. Like, she was cheating. There's no question about it. But then, Charles, out of his damn mind, Reynolds, did go on trial for obviously this event. And as it all ended, September 20th, 1907, so about 9 months later, Charles Reynolds was acquitted on murder charges that he was brought up. Using the defense, essentially, they justified his actions against Hibbens. This was seriously the argument. I had to relook at my notes to even believe that this was real, and I almost kind of vindicate it myself, but essentially, Charles Reynolds' argument for why he was justified in doing what he was doing was that every bit as much as he was committing a crime by going after this guy in a the most aggressive way possible, he argued that George Hibbens was every bit as much as Charles committing a felony by killing him. Hibbens was in every bit of way. This is a horribly constructed sentence. He was in just as much of a way responsible of committing a felony by going into his marital home where he had a wife and kids and whatnot, and essentially engaging in an affair with her, which I think, I'm not sure exactly how the law was, but society speaking, if you were committing infidelity, that was considered a crime by society standards. And it seems like they pretty much let him off. There was this idea that Hibbens had done so wrong, and the jury was sympathetic towards this guy. I think anybody could tell that this George Hibbens guy was a jerk-off, and it's 1907. People's morals are a little bit flexible. There is such a thing as honor killings that are kind of vindicated by the populace, and I think this kind of fit in to that vein. People kind of justified this as an honor killing, a man getting rid of this scumbag to try to save his family and save his marriage. I think that was why Charles Reynolds essentially got off in this case. And my final departing point, as I took down here, It only took 20 minutes for the jury in this case to reach their verdict. And when Charles Reynolds was found innocent of this crime, the whole courtroom broke out in a standing ovation. Everybody applauded this. Everybody wanted him to get off for this. And even now, under the circumstances of 2019 Portland, Oregon, I'm kind of glad he got off from it too. And that is the story of the murder of George Hibbens. A case of a man who got away with emptying his gun into another human being, ending his life, and getting off because the guy he shot was a piece of shit. That's pretty much the end piece moral to be taken away from this story, which is just, it's not your run-of-the-mill love triangle story, you know? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one. It's bizarre. And as always, guys, remember, like, share, subscribe, comment, but keep it at least PG-13, I guess. And hit up my Patreon if you want to help me out that way. I would appreciate it. Get myself some linguistics lessons so I can learn how to talk again. But all that said, I obviously need to stop talking because I'm losing my mind. But till next time, guys, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian with another episode of Historic Murders. What the hell is that? Of Portland.